Hi there. If I asked you, what do you feel about your job? What would you say? Would you say, I love my job? Or something on the lines of, yeah, it's okay. I don't like it very much, but it's all right. Or would you say something on the lines of, oh, I hate it from the bottom of my heart? Well, of course, I won't know uh, how you would answer, but I suspect you will have fairly strong amount of feelings about your job. Jobs are important part of our lives. We earn our livelihood through the jobs that we do, but it's much more than that. We gain a sense of identity through our jobs. Gain a sense of achievement through our jobs. When our jobs aren't going well, we may feel like a failure. So jobs are a very important part of our lives. And how we feel about our jobs then can influence not only our life at work but also outside work, right? That's why I would say job satisfaction is a very important construct, and that is what I will discuss in this video. I will discuss what job satisfaction is, what contributes generally to job satisfaction. We will also briefly touch upon what are the effects of job satisfaction. And again, what are some of the things that you could do to enhance job satisfaction? So these are some of the questions that we will try to answer in this lecture, in this video. To put things in perspective, we can view job satisfaction as an important individual level outcome variable. Why? Because job satisfaction is one of the ways that leaders' effectiveness on that job is evaluated. You would remember the first way that leaders' effectiveness is evaluated is through achievement of goals. And the second way is how satisfied or dissatisfied are the leader's followers. So job satisfaction then would be an important outcome variable for the leaders. Job satisfaction, of course, will also be an important outcome variable for all employees, all the subordinates, right? Because everyone likes to be happy on their jobs. No one likes to be dissatisfied on their jobs. So it's an important outcome variable also for all the employees. That's what everyone desires. We can also view job satisfaction from a different perspective. We can view it as a means through which other important outcomes are achieved. You would have heard of the idea that satisfied employees or happy employees perform better. If that's true, then job satisfaction can be a means through which you can get higher performance from your employees. Job satisfaction then can also be a means through which you can get greater commitment, greater organizational commitment from your employees. So you can see how job satisfaction can be seen both as a mechanism as well as an outcome variable. In this video, of course, I will go through several theories as well as some of the research that has been done on job satisfaction. But let's start with some statistics. to see how job satisfaction has changed over the years, or has it not changed. There are many organizations like Gallup, like Society of Human Resource Management, SHRM, and others that have been doing job satisfaction surveys on the American workforce. So we have data of how the job satisfaction levels, average job satisfaction levels of the American workforce has changed over the years. Now here in this graph, we see data from 2003 to 2016. And if we see just this part of the time frame, then we see job satisfaction actually has increased. So the percentage of completely satisfied workers has gone up from 42% to about 51% in 2016. Actually, we see only half the picture. Prior to that, if you look data 10 years before, it had peaked close to about 60%, 61%. So from one perspective, we could say that job satisfaction levels have been increasing. But if we see long-term data, which is unfortunately not visible in this graph, there has been a decline in job satisfaction levels. Now, before we proceed further, let's be clear about what we mean by job satisfaction. There are quite a few definitions, but it's pretty much different wording, but we mean pretty much the same thing. Job satisfaction typically refers to a pleasurable emotional state resulting from the appraisal of one's job or job experiences. In simple words, how do you evaluate your job? Do you think about your job in positive terms or negative terms? How does your job make you feel? When you think about your job and the job experiences that you have, do you feel happy or do you feel unhappy? Simple. So how you feel about your job and what you think about your job. So both the affective component as well as the cognitive component. This would remind you of attitudes. Job satisfaction is actually a type of attitude. It's a workplace attitude. And attitudes tend to be relatively stable. So compared to emotions, compared to moods, which can vary more frequently. Emotions can vary just based on whatever stimulus you encounter. Moods tend to be a little bit more stable, that can last few hours or days. Attitudes tend to be more stable, not as stable as your personality traits, which tend to be very stable, that can remain pretty much the same for years, decades. But your job attitudes tend to stay fairly stable. In other words, they don't change dramatically from day to day, right? The overall job satisfaction or dissatisfaction that you may have tends to be fairly stable over the months. Now, unless some major event happened, then we may see either an increase or decrease in your satisfaction levels. So attitudes, of course, have an affective component, which is the emotional component. They have a cognitive component, which is the beliefs, and then they have the behavioral component. And they, of course, are all correlated with each other. They all affect each other depending on what your beliefs are. That will impact how you feel, which will impact how you behave, and so on and so forth. So if you believe that your boss is a smart person, then you may have positive feelings about him. And then you may like to work with him. That will be behavioral component, right? So they will all be associated with each other. Whereas if you feel that if you think that your boss is not a very smart person, he's a dumb guy, then um, you will not have much respect for him. So feeling wise, you may feel negatively. Behavior wise, you may not go to him whenever there is a problem that needs to be solved, right? So we will how you evaluate something impacts your actions as well. So that's what I am saying here. So job satisfaction would matter um, to the employees as well as for the leader, because job satisfaction can impact, by definition, people's behavior. It can change people's behavioral tendencies. Related to what I was just mentioning, I want to share with you the results from a job satisfaction survey on IT professionals. And the results, of course, tell us what percentage reported to be satisfied, what percent is dissatisfied, what percent is very satisfied, very dissatisfied, and so on. But I'm not particularly interested in that. What I am interested in is this part of the figure, where you see the question that was asked was, how did you feel 12 months ago? And 61% of the respondents said they felt the same. In other words, their job satisfaction levels did not change, irrespective of whether they were very satisfied, satisfied, neither satisfied nor dissatisfied, dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. For 61% of the respondents, their levels stayed pretty much the same. It did change for some people. For 19%, yes, it did change in the positive direction, and 17% felt less satisfied. And this was not just results from one isolated survey. We see the same pattern in the following year when the researchers do the same survey. And what do we see? 58% had the same levels of satisfaction. Fewer percentage had satisfaction levels that either increased or decreased. So from this, again, you can see how job satisfaction tends to be relatively stable. Now I'm saying relatively stable. It's not that it is 100% stable, but our job conditions don't change dramatically. So that would be one of the reasons why our satisfaction levels would also remain pretty much the same. So that would be one factor, but there are other reasons also that could influence why our job satisfaction levels can be pretty stable. That brings us to the first theory that we will discuss on job satisfaction, and I will come to it in the next slide. So the first theory that we are discussing is the dispositional model of job satisfaction. This comes from the empirical observations that our satisfaction levels, or dissatisfaction levels for that matter, they tend to remain pretty much the same. They don't change dramatically. So if you are dissatisfied also, it will remain pretty much the same. It's not changing in a big way, right? So it's not like changing in a big way. So this is, of course, also the pattern that we observed in the previous slide, where I shared the results of the studies done on employees working in the IT sector. So part of this similarity in the satisfaction or dissatisfaction levels could be explained by the job conditions having remained the same, right? If the job conditions haven't changed, then why would your satisfaction or dissatisfaction levels change. But when we analyze the data, we find that job conditions don't explain this pattern completely. They explain rather a smaller percentage of the data. So it turns out our personality traits influence our satisfaction or dissatisfaction for that matter. So let's say some guy named Michael. This person may generally be very satisfied. He was satisfied yesterday, and yesterday I'm saying metaphorically. Yesterday could mean 2 years ago. And he is highly satisfied today. And even 5 years from now, if you do a survey on him, he will be satisfied. Even if he has changed jobs. So his job conditions have changed. He is not on the same job. And yet you will find pretty much the same pattern. He is very satisfied on his job. Another person, say, let me call this person John. Okay. And this person is dissatisfied today. He's very unhappy on his job. Interestingly, this person was very unhappy also 3 years ago, even if it was on a different job. And if we do a test on John maybe 4 years from now, we will find that he is still dissatisfied. Maybe he has changed jobs again, or the boss has changed or whatever. Even in the current job, there are situations may have changed, but we may find that he's still dissatisfied. So what is happening here? It's the temperament of John that is making this person generally be dissatisfied on his job. It's the temperament of Mike that is making him happy on his job. So that is what we are referring to as the dispositional model of job satisfaction. Our personality traits also influence how satisfied or dissatisfied we will be on our jobs. Our job conditions, yes, influence job satisfaction, and that is something that we will discuss in some of the other theories. But our personality traits also influence our satisfaction levels. That's what the dispositional model of satisfaction tells us. So our personality traits influence our overall job satisfaction according to the dispositional model. There are many personality traits, of course, but the big 5 personality traits is the best way to understand personality traits, and I have separate videos on that. But if we touch upon this quickly, neuroticism is one of the big 5 personality traits. If you score high on the neuroticism dimension, it is likely that you will then be more dissatisfied on your job. If you score low on the neuroticism dimension, or in other words, if you are scoring high on the emotional stability dimension, there is a lesser likelihood that you will be dissatisfied on your jobs. The trait of extroversion, for instance, has been associated with you being more satisfied on your jobs. So conscientiousness is another trait that would be generally be associated with more job satisfaction. People tend to be more satisfied, highly conscientious people. So our personality traits then is having an impact on our satisfaction levels. There is another way that we can talk about personality traits, which is in terms of our tendency to either feel positive emotions or negative emotions. Our tendency to experience positive emotions is called positive affectivity, and the tendency to feel negative emotions is called negative affectivity. And people vary in these tendencies. If you score very high on positive affectivity, you will likely be more satisfied on your job. If you score very high on the negative affectivity, you will likely be more dissatisfied on your job. So Because personality traits influence our satisfaction levels, and because personality traits tend to be very stable, they change very slowly and we don't see much changes, right? Personality traits tend to be very stable. Because they influence our satisfaction levels, then job satisfaction can also become fairly stable. Personality traits are, of course, influenced by genes, but also by our early childhood experiences and so on and so forth. We won't go into that much of detail. I just want to focus on this part of the equation, how personality traits influence our job satisfaction. Before we move on to the next theory, let's briefly reflect on the implications of the dispositional model of job satisfaction for leaders. We know that leaders would strive to enhance job satisfaction in their followers because that's one of the ways that leaders' effectiveness is evaluated. They may also strive to enhance job satisfaction because they may believe that by enhancing employee satisfaction, they can enhance the productivity in these employees, right? So, and typically what would be the steps that leaders take to enhance job satisfaction? They may change the work conditions. They may provide some rewards to the employees. They may fulfill the needs, the aspirations of the employees, and so on. These are some of the broad level actions that leaders may take to enhance satisfaction in the employees. Now, would these actions always work? The dispositional model tells us that sometimes these actions may not work. So I'm forgetting the names that I had given in the example in the last slide. So if we have a person who is generally dissatisfied, John, he's very dissatisfied. And if his higher level of dissatisfaction is related to his personality traits, then the specific actions that the leader takes may not have a large impact on John's satisfaction levels or dissatisfaction levels, because John dispositionally is prone to feeling dissatisfied. That's the point that I am trying to make here. And same on the other end of the spectrum as well. If we have a person who is very satisfied, you may believe as a leader that your actions are contributing to the person's satisfaction, but it is just the person's personality. The person is dispositionally a very happy person. So you whatever it is that you believe may not actually be true. So of course these things will apply more to those employees where personality is so strong that it is having a stronger impact on job satisfaction. Now, from the employee perspective, if you have personality traits that is strongly associated with higher satisfaction, then of course there is no reason to complain. You are a happy person. You can feel good that you are lucky in the genetic lottery. But if you are one of those persons who has high neuroticism, low conscientiousness, the strong introverted person, and so on and so forth, or maybe highly disagreeable. So all the combinations that dispose you to be more dissatisfied on your job, are you doomed? Or in other words, can you do something to change your satisfaction levels? it turns out that you can do some things, and you actually are doing some of those things by virtue of the fact that you are enrolled in the university. So there have been studies that have evaluated the job satisfaction levels by the education level. This is not the recent most graph, but the patterns pretty much tend to be the same. So the higher the level of education, the greater tends to be the satisfaction that people experience on their jobs. So you can see without a high school diploma, your satisfaction levels are going to be lower. If you have a high school diploma, it becomes higher. More if you have some college education. If you have a college degree, it goes up even further. So education can have an impact also on your job satisfaction levels. And the mechanisms through which this happens is complex. It's beyond the scope of this short lecture. Maybe you then, because of the education, are getting the opportunity to work in jobs that is related to your interest. Maybe because of your higher qualifications, you are getting better paid jobs, right? So numerous mechanisms may come into play, which result ultimately in higher education being related to or being associated with higher job satisfaction. But something to keep in mind for sure. Now we will do a short quiz. Here are some potential factors of high job satisfaction. I want you to pause the video here and find the top 3 causes of job satisfaction in the general population. So out of all these factors, which do you think is the strongest factor or strongest contributor to high job satisfaction? Which do you think is the second biggest cause of high satisfaction? Okay, that's the question for you. This brings us to Herzberg's two-factor theory of job satisfaction. I don't know exactly how you answered to that question of top 3 causes of high job satisfaction. But typically when I ask this question in the class, I get varied responses, of course. Some would say it's the achievement on your job, but many say it's the money that you make on your job that is a big predictor of how satisfied you will be. Or the work conditions influence high satisfaction. Or the relationship that you have with your boss is a major contributor of high satisfaction. It turns out only some of these responses are right and some are wrong, completely wrong. At least that's what Herzberg found in his research that he conducted several decades ago. So from a certain perspective, this is a little dated research. Plus, he did this research just on a group of accountants and engineers. Now, of course, we know we have a much greater variety of workforce. Nonetheless, Herzberg's theory has had a tremendous impact in the field. It's considered one of the classic studies, and some of the replications of Herzberg's paper also continues to support Herzberg's theory, partially if not completely. So let's see what Herzberg finds. Herzberg goes about asking groups of accountants and engineers the factors that make them satisfied, the factors that make them unhappy or dissatisfied. He does these long interviews, and he was wise enough to specifically ask the things that make them dissatisfied. because it turned out the factors that contributed to the satisfaction of the workforce was different from the factors that contributed to people's dissatisfaction. So the factors that contribute to satisfaction, he called them motivators or motivator factors. So when these things are present, people feel more motivated on their jobs. People are more satisfied on their jobs. That is, having a sense of achievement, getting recognition for your achievements. The work itself. Do you love your work or do you not like your work? If you love your work, then you will be highly satisfied on your work. You will be motivated on your work. Do you have responsibilities on your work? If you have major responsibilities, then you feel good. You feel satisfied on your job. Are you advancing? Are you growing? Advancing is, going up the hierarchy. Growth would refer to personal development. So these factors, when are present on your job, are going to contribute to you feeling more happy on your job. And achievement, recognition, work itself become the top 3 factors that contribute to people's high satisfaction. Now, the factors that contributed to dissatisfaction were actually very different. He called them hygiene factors. These factors, when present, did not contribute to the satisfaction in any major way. So 0 is the baseline. So above 0 would mean these factors were present. Okay. So their presence did not necessarily make the employees satisfied in a major significant way. But when they were absent or when they were problematic, that these factors contributed to employee dissatisfaction. In other words, if the company policies were fair, it did not necessarily make them highly satisfied. But if they were unfair, then that made them highly dissatisfied. Supervision, if it existed, did not necessarily make people highly satisfied. But if there was no proper supervision, they were dissatisfied. If relationship with supervisor was bad, it made them dissatisfied. But relationship with supervisor good did not make people satisfied in a major way. You get the idea. Work conditions, if they are horrible, it makes you dissatisfied. But if they are good, does not necessarily make you more motivated at work, does not necessarily make you very satisfied. Excuse me. Salary. If you aren't getting paid well, you will be dissatisfied. But if you are getting paid a lot of money, does not necessarily mean that you will be highly satisfied on your job. And so on. Job security. If you don't have job security, you will be dissatisfied. But having job security will not necessarily make you more motivated. You get the idea, you get the pattern. So this is what Herzberg finds. Now I want you to think about the implications of Herzberg's theory from a leadership perspective. Going by Herzberg's theory, what would you do to enhance job satisfaction in your employees? What would you do to reduce job dissatisfaction in your employees? It should be pretty straightforward. If you want to enhance job satisfaction, you would need to do different things. If you want to reduce job dissatisfaction, you need to do different things. So, and those things would be the things that we have listed here. To enhance job satisfaction, you need to focus on employee achievement, recognition, work itself, responsibility, advancement, and growth. To reduce job dissatisfaction, you have to focus on these hygiene factors. What Herzberg called the hygiene factors. You need to make sure that they are getting paid well, their work conditions are good, the relationship with supervisor is good, company policies are fair, there is job security, and so on. Herzberg's theory is an interesting theory because it gives some unique insights about job satisfaction, right? The traditional view was that satisfaction and dissatisfaction were opposite ends of the same continuum. If you are highly satisfied, you are not dissatisfied. If you are highly dissatisfied, then you are not satisfied. But Herzberg sees that satisfaction and dissatisfaction are independent dimensions. Okay. Why independent dimensions? Because the factors that enhance job satisfaction are different from the factors that reduce job dissatisfaction. So that's the reason he sees them as independent dimensions. And this is very interesting. This has profound implications for leadership. Sometimes leaders wonder, I am doing everything, how come satisfaction levels are not going up? That may be because the leader is focusing more on the hygiene factors. So if you have started paying more, which is good, you should do that. You making the company policies fair, again, those are good things. That will only reduce job dissatisfaction. Once, just because company policies are fair, will not necessarily make you highly motivated, highly excited to come to work, right? Just because you are getting fair salary will not necessarily make you super excited to come to work. You are realizing that, right? But if the company policies are unfair, if your boss is a lousy person, uh, if you are not getting a fair pay, if you have high insecurity, job insecurity, then of course you will be dissatisfied. But having job security, having fair pay, having fair policies, having a good boss will not automatically make you super excited to work hard. That is the reason you need to have that clarity about what actually enhances job satisfaction, what actually enhances motivation in people. And those factors tend to be related to uh, advancement, to loving the job, um, to achievement, doing a job well and feeling the sense of achievement that you get from that. So you need to focus on different things if you want to enhance satisfaction and reduce dissatisfaction. The next theory that we will discuss is the value theory. It's a simple theory, but very interesting nonetheless. In fact, I like this theory a lot because it takes an individualized perspective of job satisfaction. What do I mean by that? Value theory tells us that our satisfaction or dissatisfaction would be determined based on the value that we place or the importance that we place on different things that we get from the job. So what do we get from our job? We get money, we get promotions, we make connections with people, um, we get the satisfaction of doing job that we like, and so on and so forth. So how much of value do we place on each of these factors? What value theory tells us that different people will value or will place greater or lesser importance to different things because we are different people. And depending on how much of importance we give to these different factors, that will be a big contributor to how satisfied or dissatisfied we will be. If I take a specific example, say pay. If pay matters a lot to you, it matters a lot to you, and you aren't getting paid well, then you will be highly dissatisfied. Your neighbor is also not getting paid well, but to him, say, the pay doesn't matter. He is a millionaire anyway. He's just working for experience. For, say that's a possibility, right? Then he will not be as dissatisfied, but you will be dissatisfied because to you getting a high pay matters, right? So, or you will be again in the opposite end. You will be very satisfied also if you are getting more money, because through that money you are being able to fulfill all the big needs that you are having, and you will be motivated to earn even more money, right? So you can see that the value theory is taking a different perspective from what Herzberg had taken. Herzberg's theory is very valuable, not that it isn't, but gives an idea of the general tendencies in the population. So in the overall population, yes, we will see different factors contributing to job satisfaction and different factors contributing to job dissatisfaction. But you are not just the general population. We are not the averages of the general population, right? Your condition, my condition may be very different. That's what I meant by individualized perspective. So if we discuss value theory mathematically, this is how the equation will be. So your dissatisfaction, how dissatisfied you will be, depends on the value of what you want. Again, let's for simplicity purpose talk about pay, because that is the thing that is, we can put a number value easily. Let's say you want $100,000 per year salary. That's what you want. That's the value that you want. But what is it that you're getting, or what is it that you have? Say you are currently getting $50,000 per annum. So 100,000 minus 50,000, we have a difference here, 50,000 points. Okay. Now, just because there is a difference of 50,000 here does not automatically mean that you will be dissatisfied. You will be dissatisfied if you are paying a lot of importance to money. How important is money to you? Say on a scale of 0 to 10, or 1 to 10. 10 meaning it's extremely important. 0 meaning it's not at all important. You don't care. You will work even for free. Then you realize your dissatisfaction levels will be determined a lot based on importance, because it's a multiplication here. So 50,000 times 10 would increase the value in a significant way. It will become 500,000 points. In contrast, if you don't give any importance to money, if it is 0, then dissatisfaction level is 0, because even though the difference here was 50,000 times 0 will be 0. You're getting the point. So your level of dissatisfaction then will be determined based on how much of importance you are placing on each of these variables. Your overall satisfaction will be summation of each of these factors. So that's what the value theory is telling us. It's simple, straightforward, but from a leadership perspective, it has a lot of implications, right? You are now encouraged to approach each individual differently. You have to make the effort of understanding what does each individual value, and then act accordingly. You cannot treat everyone with this exact same generic approach like what Herzberg maybe was recommending. So there will be some people who may value money. There will be some people who may value autonomy to a huge extent. There may be others who may not value autonomy as much. So there will be some people for whom that work satisfaction, the satisfaction that you get from your work is extremely important. But for others, it may not matter as much. And then, as a leader, you need to figure these things out and act accordingly. You cannot use the same approach with everyone when it comes to enhancing their satisfaction or reducing their dissatisfaction. I can relate with this really well because I personally value certain things that I know my colleagues did not value as much. When I was working in the corporate sector, for instance, I valued certain things a lot. I valued autonomy. I valued the work itself. I liked certain intellectual stimulation on my job, which some of my colleagues didn't value as much. Okay. Consequently, you know, they were maybe more satisfied because they were getting some of the things uh, that like pay, for instance, they were getting it, but pay didn't matter as much to me there. So I was a little more dissatisfied because what I sought from my job in terms of task significance, in terms of enjoying the work itself, I wasn't getting that to the extent that I valued it, to the extent that I gave importance to those variables. You get the idea, right? So if my boss then is trying to motivate me, he should focus on enhancing those factors that I value. Then my boss, my leader will be more effective with respect to getting me motivated, getting me more satisfied on my job. The next theory that we will discuss is the social information processing model of job satisfaction. It's a mouthful, but it's actually very simple, very straightforward. And more importantly, very insightful. It gives you certain insights that the other theories haven't given you yet. So what does this model tell us? It tells us that we are influenced by the people around us. Our feelings are influenced by the people around us. Our attitudes are influenced by the people around us. So the extent of job satisfaction you feel or the extent of job dissatisfaction you feel are also influenced by the people around us. In simple words, if most of my colleagues are very happy on their job, they are highly satisfied, then it's likely that I too will be satisfied. I too will be happy on my job. If my colleagues are again very unhappy, dissatisfied, then I too will be unhappy. I too will be dissatisfied on my job. And the way this happens is because emotions are contagious. Right now, of course, we have the COVID-19 virus going around, due to which we avoid people who are potential carriers of the virus. But we should be avoiding people who harbor a lot of negative emotions too, because those emotions will rub off on us. And there is a lot of evidence in support of what I'm saying. There is a lot of evidence in support of the social information processing model. Emotions are contagious, and we tend to adopt the emotions, the attitudes of people around us. Now, this theory is interesting also if we compare it with the other theories. This theory identifies factors outside us that contribute to our satisfaction, our dissatisfaction. The previous theories focused on factors within us, right? The dispositional model focused on factors within us, which are our personality traits. The value model, the value theory also focused on factors within us, how much of value do I place on different things in the job? But how much of value I place is a factor within me. The things in my job are of course outside me, but how much of value I place on those factors are factors within me, the importance that I place. Now, Herzberg theory is focusing on outside factors in terms of typical factors that generally contribute to satisfaction or dissatisfaction. But the social information processing model is focusing on how other people's emotions can contribute to our satisfaction or dissatisfaction without even we being aware of the way that their emotions are affecting us. So it's like yawning. One person starts yawning, everyone starts yawning, or many people do, right? So uh, this theory has a lot of value as well, both from the employee perspective as well as from the leader's perspective. From the employee's perspective, of course, you want to be happy, you want to be satisfied. So consciously make an effort to associate with people who are more happy, more satisfied, and spend a little less time probably with people who are generally dissatisfied. Um, from a leader's perspective, implications are again many. But the key implication is that you would need to manage dissatisfactions the moment that you notice. You cannot ignore dissatisfactions for a long time, because those negative emotion in that one person can easily spread into the entire department, because emotions are contagious. Similarly, if we are talking about positive emotions from a leader's perspective, then you should try to maximize those positive emotions and have mechanisms in place so that those emotions, those positive emotions, can then easily spread as well. Okay, so the social information processing model has a lot of practical implications as well. Now let's go through some quick stats before we finish this discussion on job satisfaction. Here's the correlations between the different factors of facets of job satisfaction with the overall job satisfaction. And you can see that work itself is a big contributor. The correlations are close to 0.7, which is very high. Supervision, co-worker, your relationship with them is also fairly high at close to 0.5. But pay is one of the smaller contributors to overall job satisfaction. This is again the overall trend. Okay. So then we see that this result is partly supporting Herzberg's arguments, right? So even though these results are more recent results from meta-analytic studies, we are seeing that at least part of what Herzberg was arguing is being supported here. Now let's see how job satisfaction is related to some other important variables. Turnover and absenteeism, they are both correlated with job satisfaction in the negative direction actually. So the more satisfied you are, the less likely you are to leave the organization, and the less likely you will be absent on your job. So these are negatively correlated, but the correlations are fairly high. In other words, another way of talking about turnover is the more job satisfaction you have, the greater organizational commitment you have, right? Because organizational commitment means you are deciding to stay in the organization. You are not thinking of leaving the organization. Now, in compared to organizational commitment and absenteeism, the correlation between job satisfaction and job performance is statistically significant, but the strength of those correlations is relatively small. So performance and job satisfaction are correlated, but it's not as strongly correlated as job satisfaction is with organizational commitment. Now, what do these correlations mean? You would have heard that correlations does not automatically mean causation, right? So you should not assume that just because job satisfaction and job performance are correlated, well, the correlations may not be super high like it was between job satisfaction and organizational commitment, but still we have fairly strong correlations here. But these correlations do not automatically mean that job satisfaction is causing high job performance. We should not automatically assume that. But if it were true, then you would work towards enhancing job satisfaction because that's the means through which you can enhance performance in people. But is it really true? It turns out that the effect of job satisfaction on job performance surely is there, but the effect is stronger in the opposite direction. In other words, job performance has a stronger effect on job satisfaction than job satisfaction has on job performance. In simple words, if you are a high performer, if you do really well on your job, that is going to have a bigger impact on your job satisfaction. And this is profound information. You would like to be happy on your job. You would like to be satisfied on your job. All of us would like to be happy. But one of the effective ways of being happy is to actually do well on our jobs. And you realize the mechanisms through which this happens can be, again, a long topic of discussion. But the first thing is that you feel good when you are doing well on your job. It gives you a deep sense of satisfaction. A job well done gives a deep sense of satisfaction. So there is an immediate effect that you have from doing a job well. But there are a lot of indirect effects as well. When you perform well, you get more recognition. You may get, better pay, better monetary benefits, more promotions, more advancement opportunities, which in turn will then enhance your job satisfaction, right? But it's important to have this information in mind that job performance has a stronger impact on job satisfaction than the other way around. I will finish my presentation with a brief discussion on the consequences of job dissatisfaction. And the consequences can be severe. So from a leader's perspective, it is important that you pay attention to the satisfaction levels, to the dissatisfaction levels of your employees. We have already discussed that dissatisfaction leads to people leaving, voluntary turnover. And that's not good for the organization. Of course, when incompetent people leave, you fire them, that may be good for the organization. But when competent people are leaving, competent, productive people, then that's not good for the organization. And people typically leave when they are unhappy. There could be other factors as well, but one of the common reasons why people leave is when they are not very happy in their organizations. Now, I do recognize that some people leave because they are unhappy, but unhappy not because of any organizational reasons, not because of any leadership reasons. It could be because of they being dispositionally unhappy, which was the dispositional model. And in that case, what we see happens is the honeymoon effect. So let's say this is the point at which they leave the organization. Okay. Prior to that, they were not very happy. They were dissatisfied. Okay. They leave the organization and join a new organization. When they join the new organization, you typically will see a spike in their happiness, which is actually the honeymoon effect. But after some time, their happiness levels, the satisfaction levels drop, which is what we call is the hangover effect. So yes, it is true from a dispositional perspective that people's happiness levels may spike after a change of a job, but again it drops back to the original levels. But from the organization's perspective, if this employee was a productive employee, then we should take care to make sure that this person doesn't leave the organization. We should take steps to reduce the dissatisfaction level in people, right? There is again evidence of dissatisfaction leading to absenteeism, leading to accidents, injuries, leading to higher theft by employees. That's in a lot of research. Again, we cannot cover everything. And the effects on job performance and overall company performance, even though the effect is relatively weak, but still there is effect on job performance. So it is important that we take steps to enhance job satisfaction in our employees, in our subordinates. And that is the reason you see some organizations putting in a lot of effort to enhance job satisfaction in their employees. Google, for instance, does that. Now, not all the approaches may be valid approaches. Some approaches may be more economical and more effective than others, but it's a big topic, it's a huge topic that we cannot do full justice to through a short 1 hour video. But the nice thing is that many of the other theories that we will discuss in context of motivation will also give you certain insights about how to enhance job satisfaction in people. The job characteristics model, for instance, which I will discuss next, will again give you some great insights about how you can enhance both job satisfaction as well as motivation in people. So we will stop the video here. Thank you.